Hello wizards, and welcome to the Academy, where you will learn about how to read liquidity flows in the global economy and macroeconomics. Today, we're going to talk about the Treasury General Account of the US, often abbreviated as TGA, what it is, how the production of public debt works, and how it impacts liquidity. So, first of all, what is the TGA? The TGA is an account held at the Federal Reserve where the US Treasury keeps its cash balances. It was established to ensure that the US government can efficiently manage its resources and financial commitments, and it functions as the primary account for collecting revenues, disbursing funds, and executing fiscal policy. The money that a government owes to its creditors is referred to by various synonymous terms, such as public debt, treasury securities, government bonds, and sovereign debt. And the TGA has the responsibility of issuing debt to fund government expenditures in the form of these three main instruments, which are T-bills, bonds, and notes. Bonds have maturities of more than 10 years and are often used to finance large, long-term projects or to refinance existing debt. Notes have maturities of 1 to 10 years and are often used to finance the government's longer-term cash needs. They work as bonds, but they have a more intermediate duration. Bills, finally, have maturities of 1 year or less and are often used to finance the government's short-term cash needs. The prices of these securities are inversely related to interest rates, meaning that when interest rates rise, the price of Treasury securities fall, and when interest rates fall, the prices rise. These types of securities also have different utilities for the Treasury. If rates are high, for instance, the TGA may prefer to issue bills with a short-term maturity and allow the Treasury to roll over its debt more frequently. If interest rates are lower instead, the Treasury may prefer to issue notes or bonds with a longer maturity to lock in the interest rate for a longer period. The issuance of different types of securities also attracts different categories of buyers and has different consequences on market liquidity. Let's take a look at the holders of public debt chart, where you can see the total amount of outstanding debt from the Treasury and the size of the main three different categories of buyers. We have Federal Reserve banks, foreign and international investors, and the US private sector. As you can tell, when the US Treasury issues new debt, the biggest buyers are by far private investors that you can see in green. The funds for the purchase in this case are usually drawn from their bank account balances or from liquidating other assets, and this is also typically true for international investors, that we can see here in blue. Therefore, these buys can result in a drop in bank reserves and overall US market liquidity if the buyers are from the US, or in a drop in global liquidity if the buyers are foreign investors. Besides draining market liquidity for the purchase, the issuance of notes and bonds also generally increases interest rates in the US. And for all these reasons we mentioned, we can consider it as being a bearish occurrence for risk assets in general. However, when new bills get issued, as we explained in the repo market dive that we just recently did, money market funds tend to draw liquidity from the repo market to buy them, which is net neutral for short-term circulating liquidity, but becomes bullish once the Treasury starts to spend its newly acquired content into the economy. So, overall, T-bills issuance can be considered mid-term bullish for liquidity dynamics and risk assets. The difference in the impact that different types of securities can have on the markets and on liquidity is why you'll want to track the issuance and redemption of debt directly from inside the Treasury. This is the chart that we made to illustrate the issuance and redemptions of different types of debt instruments from the TGA. As you can imagine, positive values indicate the issuance of new debt securities, while negative values represent the repayment of existing debt. As you can also see from the legend, bills are denoted in green, while notes are represented in blue and bonds in red. Note how from January through April, but also in May and June, we had a significant issuance of bonds and notes from the Treasury. Let's quickly take a look at the net US liquidity chart to see how it translated into the underlying US liquidity conditions and into the S&P price. January through April, May and June. As you can see, a significant drawdown in both liquidity and asset valuations. But let's go back to our Treasury issuance chart once again. Note on how, from January up until now, the T-bills issuance has really picked up. This has many reasons, from the looming of the debt ceiling to the increases in interest rates, as we said. But let's look at what was the effect on markets once again. Here, from January up until now. As you can see, significant appreciation of the S&P. Now, going back to the holders of public debt chart though, there's another concept that I'd like to touch on, which concerns the creation of money and relates to the liquidity status of the markets. You see, different buyers do matter in the context of liquidity. When the Treasury issues new debt, the banks, in purple here in the chart, absorb these newly created securities as assets in their balance sheets and offset the newly acquired asset with the creation of a new liability. This ensures that the banking sector can always remain a buyer of last resort for public debt, and when this process takes place, it leads to an increase in the money supply and systemic liquidity. Lastly, it's also important to note that the Treasury General Account is constrained in its spending capacity and cannot create new debt to an unlimited extent. The debt ceiling refers to the legal limit of the amount of debt that the US government can issue, and breaching it can have significant economic and financial consequences. At the time of shooting this video, the Treasury has just recently hit the ceiling. Therefore, it is now restricted in its ability to issue new debt, and is primarily utilizing its funds to cover the interest rate payments on existing maturing debt. In this instance, not being able to issue new long-dated securities that are normally bearish for risk assets, as we explained, being forced to quickly raise cash with T-bills that are normally bullish just before the ceiling was hit, and being forced to spend its content into the economy to fulfill its obligations, is producing a significant expectation for a liquidity surge in the coming months that was translated into a recent price pump for the S&P 500. However, according to the Treasury's own estimates, the lifting of the debt ceiling may happen within the next quarter. So, keep following us on our social channels to stay updated on this dynamic. In conclusion, the TGA holds a crucial position in the debt economy, and just like the repo market, the liquidity inside it can be considered as being subtracted from circulation. Therefore, it is important to stay up to date with debt policies and understand the dynamics that can impact systemic liquidity and asset momentum. Don't miss out on the next video, where we will talk about how this all ties together in the net liquidity model, a much more simple and intuitive framework to grasp the liquidity status of the US markets. Thank you for watching, Wizard, and don't forget to subscribe and turn on the bell icon if you don't want to miss our next releases.